The outstretched hand of a woman grasping for life as frantic rescuers try to drag survivors from the boiling sea.
We need to get life jackets down to these people.
This was the refugee boat just seconds before it was swamped by huge waves.
It was terrifying to watch, and there was nothing we can do.
Tossed about like a matchstick in the massive swell, it stood no chance. Eventually thrown onto rocks.
Oh, it's surfing now.
The boat broke up. Men, women and children were thrown into the swirling sea.
The seas were so rough, there was just nothing anybody could do. You know, you couldn't do anything but just stand there and watch, and you just felt so absolutely useless.
I saw children on that boat. I saw children.
Jaden Woosnam videoed the tragedy.
Women and children, yeah. I didn't see any children make it, actually.
The wooden boat was near Flying Fish Cove just after dawn.
He's screaming, so we ran down to see what it was, and it was a wreck. There was like probably 80 to 100 people on it. Just right, it was less than 20 metres off the rocks.
Witnesses watched helplessly as it slammed into the cliff face. Despite pleas by rescuers, a number of survivors refused to let go of the wreckage.
Heaps of them held onto the boat because I don't think they could swim.
Amy Rosbach says the scene was horrific.
The waves are so massive that you couldn't do anything. There was no chance of anyone going from shore out to try to save anyone.
Navy rescuers managed to save about 40 people.
Sadly, some bodies have been retrieved. I can't give you the exact numbers at this stage.
It's unclear where the boat originated, but it's believed the refugees are from Iraq and Iran.
I can't go into all of that detail. I don't have a clear picture at the moment.
What has occurred off the cliffs of Christmas Island early this morning represents a realisation of our worst fears.
The tragedy is something the people of Christmas Island will never forget.
I'll be remembering it for the rest of my life, I think.
Simon Boda, 9 News.
This is a groundbreaking agreement which is designed to smash the business model of people smugglers. People smugglers prey on the desperation of others, and what they are seeking to sell is the hope of having their claim processed in Australia. This will smash that people smugglers business model. From today, my message to anyone who is considering paying money to a people smuggler and risking their life at sea and perhaps the lives of their family members as well is do not do that in the false hope that you will be able to have your claim processed in Australia. Under this agreement, up to 800 asylum seekers will be transferred to Malaysia. This is a tough measure, but we have worked hard to ensure that there are appropriate protections in place on human rights. Asylum seekers who are transferred to Malaysia under this agreement will have their claims processed by UNHCR, the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. The persons transferred to Malaysia will not get preferential processing. They will take their place alongside these 90,000 asylum seekers and they will wait their turn. Malaysia has affirmed that it will not send any of the persons transferred back to persecution in their countries of origin. What that means in practice is that the persons transferred will be there with the permission and agreement of the Malaysian government. That means they will not be subject to any of the penalties imposed on illegal entrance. This means they will not be arrested and they will not be caned. They will be allowed to live in the community after a short period for health and identity checks. They will be allowed ongoing access to employment opportunities and will have access to appropriate medical care. Children will have access to education. To ensure the welfare of the asylum seekers transferred, there will be an oversight committee which will include representatives of UNHCR and also of the International Organisation for Migration, IOM, as well as officials from both countries, from Australia and from Malaysia. I want to make it clear that we will assess the circumstances of individuals prior to transfer, but there will be no blanket exemptions. UNHCR, along with IOM, have been consulted strongly during the course of this agreement's negotiations, and they will have a strong role to play in its implementation. Then, of course, as part of this agreement, Australia will take 4,000 genuine refugees from Malaysia. The 4,000 persons will be taken at the rate of 1,000 a year. They will be genuine refugees, and they will be people who have been registered in Malaysia by today. We'll continue to work closely with UNHCR, obviously, on the selection of the 4,000 people to come to our country. I believe that this agreement meets our nation's needs in two ways. We obviously want to work in our region in a cooperative way to ensure that we don't see people get on boats and risk their lives trying to come to Australia. So this agreement will better secure our borders and will also mean that we are sending the strongest possible message. Do not risk your life at sea. Do not pay a people smuggler. Do not get on a boat.
The reason the High Court struck down Minister Bowen's declaration of Malaysia was because it was not objectively satisfied that the four criteria set out in section 198A(3) of the current Migration Act were able to be satisfied. And in approaching the matter in that way, the court applied a legal principle known to lawyers as jurisdictional error. If the facts weren't there, there was no jurisdiction to make the declaration. The way, therefore, in order to remove any legal doubt, is to ensure that amendments to the Act are drafted in a way which does not make the Minister's declaration depend upon contestable facts. And the way that you'll see in Schedule 2, the opposition proposes we go about this, is to leave the Minister's discretion wide and indeed unreviewable, but subject to one important limitation, that is, that it is only exercisable in relation to a country which is a party to the UN Refugee Convention. Whether or not a country is a party to the UN Refugee Convention is not a contestable fact. It's a black and white question, and therefore the legal problems which beset the existing section 198A, and which in our view would potentially beset what was produced today by the Prime Minister to Mr Abbott, would not arise.
Arguably, the government's proposal today is actually an inferior proposal to the one last Friday because it increases the risk of judicial review without actually strengthening the rights protections that were entirely absent last Friday. Now, the Coalition has an alternative position. I will be taking to our party room tonight a proposal for amendments which will put beyond legal doubt the ability of the government to send people offshore for processing, provided they are sent to countries which have acceded to the UN Refugee Convention. Now, the Coalition has an alternative position. I will be taking to our party room tonight a proposal for amendments which will put beyond legal doubt the ability of the government to send people offshore for processing, provided they are sent to countries which have acceded to the UN Refugee Convention. This will restore offshore processing while also keeping protections. It will restore offshore processing while retaining offshore protections. It's, in my judgment, a much superior proposal to that which the government has put forward. You will already have, or will shortly receive, a note that we have from the former Solicitor General David Bennett, who has analysed the government's proposals from Friday night and from today, and the proposed amendments that I will be taking to the party room tonight, and he concludes that our proposal provides more legal certainty and more rights protections than either of the government proposals. In effect, our proposal is a win-win, certainty plus protections, offshore processing plus protections, whereas the government's proposals, particularly today's, are a lose-lose. Doubt as to whether anything the government does can survive legal scrutiny while not guaranteeing offshore protections.